It rarely begins with panic. Most people describe it as something small. A sudden wave of warmth, a strange lightness in the head, the room feeling just slightly farther away. Then comes the sentence doctors hear again and again, I thought I was fine. And then everything went black. But here is what most people never realize. Passing out is almost never instant. Your body starts warning you, roughly 5 to 10 seconds before shutdown. And those seconds matter more than you think. Let me explain what is actually happening. Your brain is the most oxygen-hungry organ in your body. Despite being only about 2% of your weight, it consumes nearly 20% of your oxygen supply. So when blood flow drops, even briefly, the brain reacts fast, not dramatically, efficiently. Think of it like a city losing electricity. Essential systems try to stay online. But when power falls below a critical threshold, the grid begins to fail. I once evaluated a perfectly healthy 32-year-old who fainted while standing in a crowded train. No heart disease, no neurological disorder. His trigger? Simply standing still too long in a warm environment. Blood pooled in his legs. Pressure fell. The brain received less oxygen. The body attempted to compensate, but not fast enough. Here is the critical part most people miss. Fainting is not the body malfunctioning. It is the body protecting the brain. By forcing you to collapse horizontally, gravity can quickly restore blood flow to the head. In other words, the fall is often the rescue mechanism. But before that rescue happens, your nervous system sends signals, subtle ones, hoping you'll respond in time. The question is, would you recognize them? Because the very first warning sign is so easy to dismiss that many people ignore it completely. Let's step into those first few seconds, where your body quietly tries to keep you conscious. For most people, the very first warning isn't dramatic. It's subtle enough to be ignored. A sudden dizziness, a floating sensation. Vision that feels slightly dim, almost like someone lowered the brightness of the room. This is not random. It is your brain reacting to falling blood pressure. The moment circulation drops, your brain activates an emergency reflex designed to stabilize you. Your heart may begin beating faster, and blood vessels tighten in an attempt to push more blood upward. But the brain is extremely sensitive to oxygen levels. Even a brief reduction can disturb the regions responsible for balance and visual processing. That is why many people report, I felt lightheaded, like I might tip over. Here is something physicians emphasize. Dizziness before fainting is a neurological alarm, not a minor inconvenience. One patient once described it perfectly. It felt like my body was still there, but I was slowly disconnecting from it. What he experienced was the early phase of reduced cerebral perfusion, simply meaning the brain was not receiving quite enough blood. Now here is where danger can quietly increase. Most people don't sit down, they don't brace themselves, they try to push through it. But in medicine, we teach a simple rule. If you feel suddenly lightheaded, change your position immediately. Because once this phase begins, the countdown has already started. And within just a few seconds, your body releases another signal. One that often confuses people even more. Not in the head, but across the skin. Let's move into that moment. Just seconds after the dizziness begins, your skin often delivers the next warning. Many people suddenly feel very warm, sometimes followed by an unexpected chill. Others notice their palms turning damp, a thin layer of sweat appearing without effort. This is not anxiety. It is physiology. Your nervous system has just shifted into emergency mode. When blood pressure drops, the body activates what physicians call a vasovagal response. Signals travel rapidly through the vagus nerve, briefly slowing the heart and widening certain blood vessels. The result? Less blood reaches the brain. At the same time, your body redirects circulation toward vital organs, and the skin temporarily loses some of its supply, which is why people often turn pale moments before fainting. I once spoke with a patient who said it was strange. I suddenly felt overheated, like the air disappeared. What she was feeling was her autonomic nervous system struggling to rebalance circulation. Here is the clinical detail most people don't know. Sweating right before fainting is a major warning sign, not a harmless symptom. It means the body is working hard to maintain stability, but the brain is still watching one thing above all: oxygen delivery. If it continues to fall, your senses begin changing next. And this is usually the moment people realize something is seriously wrong, because the world itself starts behaving differently. Let's step into that phase. At this stage, your brain is making a difficult decision, because despite Every attempt to stabilize blood flow, oxygen is still falling slightly below what your brain prefers. So the brain does something very strategic. It begins shutting down non-essential processing. The first system usually affected is vision. Many people report that their sight starts narrowing, almost like looking through a tunnel. Edges darken, faces blur, light fades. This is not your eyes failing. It is your brain conserving energy. Vision requires enormous neurological power. And when supply drops, the brain redirects resources towards survival centers instead. Soon after, hearing may change too. Sounds become distant, muffled, sometimes replaced by a soft ringing. One patient described it in a way physicians hear often. It felt like the room was moving away from me. In reality, your brain was pulling inward. Here is an important medical insight. Tunnel vision before fainting is a late warning sign. By this point, you are often just seconds from losing consciousness. Yet many people still try to stay standing out of embarrassment, stubbornness, or simple disbelief. But the body is no longer negotiating. It is preparing for a protective shutdown. And then comes the moment that surprises almost everyone. Because right before consciousness disappears, many people feel something unexpected, not fear, not pain, but a strange wave of calm. Let's talk about that, because it reveals just how intelligent the human body really is. Just seconds before a person passes out, something unexpected often happens. Instead of panic, the body may create a brief sensation of quiet. Some describe it as floating. Others say everything suddenly felt distant, almost peaceful. This isn't imagination. It is your brain protecting itself. As oxygen drops further, the brain reduces activity in regions responsible for complex awareness. Think of it as a rapid power-saving mode, lowering demand to prevent deeper injury. At the same time, muscle control begins to weaken. Knees soften. Posture slips. The body is preparing for gravity to do what circulation briefly cannot. Bring you horizontal so blood can return to the brain. I once asked a patient what the final moment felt like before he fainted. He said, "It was like my body decided for me, and then I was gone." That description is medically accurate, because fainting is not typically a failure. It is a reflex, a fast neurological reset designed to restore blood flow before real harm occurs. But here is the detail physicians care about most. Injury rarely comes from the faint itself. It comes from the fall, which is why recognizing the earlier signals matters so much. By the time the calm arrives, your window to react is nearly closed, and then consciousness switches off. But what happens inside your brain during those few unconscious seconds is far more controlled than most people imagine. Let's finish there. When a person finally passes out, it may look frightening from the outside, but inside the body, something remarkably organized is happening. The moment you collapse horizontally, gravity is no longer pulling blood away from your brain. Circulation improves within seconds, oxygen rises again, and the brain begins restoring normal electrical activity. Most fainting episodes last less than a minute. In many cases, recovery starts almost immediately. People wake up confused, sometimes embarrassed, often asking the same question: what just happened? What happened is that your brain protected itself. Rather than risking prolonged oxygen deprivation, it briefly powered down, then rebooted once blood flow returned. However, physicians always pay attention to why the faint occurred. Common triggers include standing too long, dehydration, sudden emotional stress, heat, exposure, rapid drop in blood pressure, usually harmless, but not always something to ignore. Here is the clinical takeaway. I want you to remember, the warning signs before fainting are your body asking for immediate cooperation. Sit down. Lie flat if possible. Elevate your legs. Those simple actions can prevent injury and help blood reach the brain faster. Let me leave you with one important perspective. Fainting feels sudden, but the body almost always sends signals first. The real danger isn't that the body shuts down. The danger is when people override those warnings, trying to push through dizziness, stay on their feet, or tough it out. Your brain is extraordinarily skilled at keeping you alive, but it works best when you listen. So the next time your body whispers that something isn't right, respect the message, because in those final seconds before blackout, your body isn't betraying you. It's trying to save you.